Nearly 40 years ago, Roberta came to China to live out her China dreams. A pioneer in healthcare, she helped revolutionize healthcare in China. Join us on Up Close to meet Roberta Lipson. Hello and welcome to Up Close. I'm here talking with Roberta Lipson, who is a pioneer in healthcare in China and also founder and CEO of United Family Hospitals. Roberta, it's a pleasure to have you here on Up Close.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here again.
Actually, I should say it's a pleasure to have you back on Up Close. Roberta was a guest on our show probably about, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We had you there for a 30th anniversary special on China's opening up. You talked a lot about coming to China when you first in the late 70s. You've been here for almost 4 decades, nearly 40 years.
Wow, 33 years, almost 34 years. So we won't push it too far ahead. But yeah, I'm really honored to be one of the few Americans to have been here over these 3+ decades and seen the amazing changes that have happened in China and been able to participate in the amazing opportunities that are presented by the fast development.
Right. I mean, there were only a handful of expatriates back then. So I gotta, after all of these decades, what keeps you staying here in China?
Well, I don't think there's this kind of rate of change and rate of constantly evolving opportunities anywhere else in the world. And really, since I arrived here in 1979, every few years brought a new China and a new set of opportunities. So I can't imagine, well, I also am very lucky to have been able to find a niche that I could make a contribution to the evolution and the development in China, that being healthcare. And so I feel like even after 30+ years, the job that we have to do to help to make a contribution in the healthcare reform in China is just at the beginning.
And it keeps evolving, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you've really taken this opportunity to change the healthcare landscape here in China. And you've created your own company called Chindex,
yes,
as well as you're the head of United Family Hospitals.
Which belongs to Chindex.
Which belongs to Chindex. Yes. But I want to take you back to that 33 years ago. You know, Roberta, you're from America. You had a very normal American upbringing, I guess, regular American, as much as American upbringings can be normal.
Yes.
So how did you acquire this interest in China?
Well, I think China was opening up to the world at the same time that I was opening up to the world. And you're absolutely right. I grew up in a suburban community outside of New York City, quite a homogeneous place, had fine education, but in those days, American educations were really very limited to the American experience. And when I started university in 1972, it was the year that Nixon came to China. And there I was bursting out of my homogeneous bubble. At the same time, China was opening up for the world to have a peek. And I was lucky enough, at the same time China was appearing in headlines every day, to have a very inspiring professor of Chinese history, which helped to pique my interest, and learning about Chinese civilization and thinking that this great legacy of culture and civilization, being in the situation that the country was in, just coming out of the Cultural Revolution, I had a feeling that things were going to be happening there. I didn't know what, to be quite honest, and I didn't have any idea what my role might be, but let's say I was just really interested to find out. And so after that first year of studying Chinese culture and history, I was hooked and started learning the language, spent my junior year in Taiwan, and then went to business school thinking that perhaps bringing some management talent and expertise, I could have a role somehow someday.
It took a lot of foresight, and also that news event, that event of Nixon coming to China, it seems like it was very influential, along with the professor that you talked about.
Well, it was a lucky set of coincidences that converged, and You know, before that, I think that you could be interested in China in an academic way, but to think that you would ever have a real role in China was something beyond imagination before 1972. And so let's just say I was extremely lucky. Unfortunately, when I finished with my education and finished with my master's degree, I said, okay, I'm ready, and it was still too early. I couldn't find an opportunity to come here, and it took actually 2 years.
But it was always on your mind. You always wanted to come.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So finally in 1979, I got an opportunity to come here.
What were your first impressions?
Well, I arrived in Beijing on a stormy August night. And you know how it can rain in August. And it was the -1 terminal. So, you know, Terminal 1.
-1 terminal.
There was another very small terminal, which is now actually the private aviation terminal. It's been reopened, but until recently it was just not in use. It was a room that I'd say maybe it was, in my memory, 90 square meters, the arrival hall. Luggage was kind of thrown in through an opening with the rain coming in as well. Floor a little wet, lots of people smoking. Dark night, into town through the airport road, which at the time, which is now the Fulu, the accessory road to the airport expressway, and arrived at the Beijing hotel, you know, 60-watt bulbs and
so what was going through your head? Here's this American girl from New York who's been studying Chinese. All of a sudden you're here. What was going through your head that night?
I'm finally here. There's a lot to learn.
So there wasn't any trepidation or any
No, well,
fear.
you know, I knew that it was all going to be different. It was all going to be foreign. And, you know, it sort of had the feeling that, you know, I'm here for a reason. There's something for me to do.
Something had been pulling you here.
Right. And so the 2 years that I spent prior to coming here, I spent in the pharmaceutical industry. So I learned quite a bit about medical business and healthcare. And when I came here, it was a great interest of mine to see what was going on in healthcare. So Chinese doctors, who are very skilled in many ways, and even then were very dedicated to their role, had no modern tools to work with. And so I immediately saw that as an opportunity to introduce the tools that have come about and the technologies that had come about in that previous, actually 15-20-year period, that never found their way to China.
Sure, to bring China up to speed in the technology and the tools for medical care.
Right.
What was the reaction? You know, you were young at that time.
Yes.
What was the reaction
20s.
when you had this idea of, because when it comes to medicine, you have to deal with hospitals, you have to deal with doctors and government officials.
Well, at the time, it was very clear to everybody, to all of those people, to the doctors, the government officials, that they really needed to begin to look at what was available from the outside. And so it was extremely welcome. And so we started looking at what were the most relevant technologies. And one of the first technologies that we brought to China was real-time ultrasound. And we loved that idea because it was affordable. It could really help doctors with diagnosis in many, many systems in the body. There was no radiation, and so we thought, wow, what a great technology for China. And so we brought some professors from the United States to introduce this technology. And one of my most poignant memories of those early days was we held a seminar in Beijing. We had 500 obstetricians there, and for the first time looking at a real-time ultrasound picture of a fetus. And I can tell you, it was such an emotional experience for these senior professors who had been spending their whole life trying to figure out what was going on with their hands and with their stethoscope, that all of a sudden they saw the fetus moving, come to life, the heart beating. And it was really like a wave that took over the whole audience, that our life as professionals is going to change.
All right, well, we're going to talk more about that career when we come back. I'm talking with Roberta Lipson from United Family Hospitals. Stay tuned. Nearly 40 years ago, Roberta came to China to live out her China dreams. A pioneer in healthcare, she helped revolutionize healthcare in China. Join us on Up Close to meet Roberta Lipson. And welcome back to Up Close. I'm talking with Roberta Lipson, a pioneer in healthcare in China. Roberta, you were just talking about how you brought ultrasound machines to China, and the effect that this sort of technology had on the Chinese doctors and healthcare here in China. After that, you decided that, okay, I'm going to continue to focus on medical equipment, but I'm going to also focus on healthcare delivery. 1994, you started building your first hospital.
Right.
Why did you have this idea? It's one thing to bring in medical equipment. It's a whole other thing to talk about service and healthcare service.
Right. So when I arrived in '79, saw this huge gap in hardware in Chinese hospitals and had the opportunity to make a certain contribution, not only with ultrasound, but with many other technologies to fill that gap. And so fast forward 10 years, many of the large hospitals in the big cities in China, from a hardware perspective, became quite well equipped. And but there was still quite a significant level of dissatisfaction on the part of patients. And I had an experience that was very definitive for me in the decision process to start exploring healthcare services. In 1989, a friend of mine, actually one of the people that I knew from the Foreign Trade Corporation that was helping the hospitals to import equipment. And in those days, the maternity hospitals in Beijing were extremely overcrowded. There was a big crisis in bed space. And so to get an opportunity to deliver your baby at one of the great hospitals in Beijing, you had to have a homer. And we actually, knowing the
Homer being a back door.
A back door,
right?
Yes. And actually, having spent the last 10 years getting to know the doctors in the hospitals and the administration in the hospitals, we were able to introduce this friend to a very good, or at the time, one of the best maternity hospitals in Beijing. And because she lived far away and I lived close to the hospital, I was able to accompany her. And it was not a good experience. I felt like for the first time I was understanding what was going on in the hospital from a patient's perspective. So I got the idea that, maybe we can do more than just the hardware piece. And we started doing market research and looking around and noticing that there were, although perhaps there weren't many Chinese patients who had the concept that they could go outside of the public system, I knew many foreign nationals living in Beijing who would very much like to have a different option in healthcare. So we started talking to the government, to the Ministry of Health and the Beijing government in the early 90s, I guess 91, 92. Also in the interim, I had gone back to the United States and had my own baby.
I was going to ask that because I know your children are much older.
Right.
So you had...
I had my first child in 1992.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Okay.
So I made the decision to go back to the States, and my experience was in such stark contrast to what she experienced. It was a celebration, a joy. The people in the hospital were on my team and were my cheerleaders, and it was clean and beautiful and bright. And I said, wait a minute, this is not fair to the women of China. How could we bring this experience? And I knew full well that there was no way for us to directly service so many women.
Right.
But I thought, having been able to see the power of pilot projects and models in China, that if we can open a model facility that the public facility can look at, they couldn't necessarily reproduce what we did because we charge more money than they're able to, and we have a different economic framework than the public hospital systems do, obviously. At least we could show a model, give people an option.
And what was the reaction by, you said you went to the Beijing city government
right.
to talk, and as a foreigner, was it difficult to get this
right.
ball rolling?
So we had a certain amount of credibility because we had done this thing over the last 10 years with the medical community and medical equipment. But when we said private hospital
right.
in the People's Republic of China, that was that had a different politics where social services maybe should be considered totally a social good. We got laughed at for quite a few years.
And this would have been the first private hospital.
Well, there were small private hospitals around who were mostly taking care of problems that people were embarrassed to go to the public hospital about, sexually transmitted diseases and such. But they were never considered, first of all, it was never considered an area that a foreign invested interest might have, that a multinational or foreign corporation could be interested in private healthcare in China. And so it took us quite a few years. Actually, it took 2 full years to get people to stop, in the government, to stop, laughing at the concept or take our concept a little bit seriously. And finally, we found those people who were perhaps a bit visionary or willing to take a chance, and gave us permission. And so finally, in 1997, we got our first very small facility opened. And, it was just so amazingly worthwhile, because from then on, we were giving, from the beginning, people a different childbirth experience, but also experience what it was like to save people's lives, to take, at the beginning, the majority of our patients were foreign nationals, so sometimes they were people that were far from home with no support system, and we could bring them comfort, help them solve whatever kind of health crisis they were in. And that was just so rewarding. And eventually, more and more Chinese people started realizing that, oh, this could be an option for us too, as they began taking options in different other areas of their life. And now, our patients are almost half and half, half foreign nationals and half local nationals.
Right. Economics always does play a big role in what, especially here in China, if they can afford private hospitals. Sure. And one of these age-old debates is the debate about access. And so we know United Family Hospitals, the cost of going and a visit is very high compared to, like you said, the public hospitals. Yes. So a lot of the Chinese patients tend to be more high wealth income individuals. Is it fair that the wealthy Chinese get to go to a beautiful facility like this with, a very international team of doctors, but that, the access is not available because of economics for those who are less wealthy?
I wish we could provide care to everybody in China, but obviously that's not practical. And so we feel from a public good perspective, there are three very important things we do. One is the direct care that we give to patients who can afford to pay for it. Secondly, as I mentioned, we are very proud of being able to model new approaches of care, new technologies, new philosophies that surround the whole activity of healthcare. And then thirdly, we have a very robust charity program. And so we have a couple of different endeavors that we're involved in from a charity perspective. First of all, we give free care, absolutely free care, equivalent to 1% of our revenues, not our profits, but our revenues, to very poor children and orphans. And so we have a relationship with 28 different foster homes and orphanages, and we provide preventive care, primary care, also big interventional surgeries for their kids where that can change their life. That's something we're really proud of. We also have a nutrition program where we facilitate these orphanages and foster homes children to be able to have proper nutrition formula under the age of 2, whereas before they were getting very sick because of nutritional issues. And then thirdly, we've just started a program together with UN Women to be a healthcare provider to women that are the victims of domestic violence. And that's a patient group who are very reluctant to access care in the public facility where there might not be a full understanding of the sensitivity that has to go into caring for people like that. And so we're very excited about this program, and we hope that after instituting this program and gathering experience for 6 months, we're also going to hold training courses for doctors in public hospitals.
All right, when we come back, we're going to hear more from Roberta Lipson, CEO of United Family Hospitals. Stay with us. Nearly 40 years ago, Roberta came to China to live out her China dreams. A pioneer in healthcare, she helped revolutionize healthcare in China. Join us on Up Close to meet Roberta Lipson. And welcome back to Up Close, where I'm speaking with Roberta Lipson from United Family Hospitals. Roberta, can you tell me, what is I'm sure there are many rewarding moments in your last 30-some years. What's the most rewarding moment for you since you've started UFH?
You know, there's rewarding moments every day, and that's what's so amazing. You started off by asking me, you know, you've been here for more than 3 decades. Do you plan on sticking with it? Why are you still doing the same thing? And it's because I think I have the most fulfilling job that anyone can possibly have, to be able to not only solve immediate health problems for people, but also to be able to bring new models of care to China. And yeah, so many, I can't even begin to know that we've built something, our company has built something that, you know, somebody I know is in a motorcycle accident, and you know, their life is on the line, and they come and their life is saved. And to be able to see systems that are being referenced as models of care for the whole country. And so I can't say one specific rewarding moment. Every time we open a new facility and I know that care is going to be extended to more people, that's amazingly rewarding. From a professional perspective, you know, I can't pick one, because it's an ongoing story. And
well, living in China and doing business in China definitely has a lot of hardships. You know, a lot of expats, they come here, they might come for a couple of years or 3 years, and then they go back. It's a little bit too much to deal with. There's the environment, all sorts of many issues, as we all know. Do you consider China, is it home for you now?
Oh, it's absolutely home. It's absolutely home. And my children, some of them have already gone off to college in the U.S., but they're coming back here because this is home. And I can't ever imagine giving up this home for something better. And in fact, sometimes my husband and I have a discussion about retirement. And, you know, we start thinking, which city...
Will you ever retire?
I don't know.
Like you're going to keep going.
I still have a lot left to do. But we talk. And, or, you know, should we try something else? And frankly, neither of us, he's a journalist, neither of us can think of an environment that's more exciting, that has more opportunities, that there's more that we can do with the knowledge that we've built over these 3 decades to make a contribution than right here. And so when you say hardships, I have to admit to the pollution issue being an issue. And I think it's gotten to the point where the government certainly is going to do something about it. Well, I'm an optimist, and I can't imagine, because we all breathe the same air. The policymakers breathe this air too. And I have frankly seen friends leave in the last 6 months because of how bad the pollution has gotten. But other than that, I can't see how people can consider Beijing a hardship post. I think it's one of the greatest cities in the world. Having grown up in New York City and until I got to Beijing thought that was the greatest city in the world, there's so much to offer culturally, gastronomically, interesting people, academics, diplomats, journalists, movers and shakers, entrepreneurs.
I can see the optimism. Yeah. Your optimism is palpable, like in your love for China. It's do you think that's what, you know, we talked a little bit about what kept you going, the tenacious nature. What do you think has created that success? What is it about you that makes you keep going? I think a lot of people, when they watch this program or hear about you, they're like, how did this woman, how was she able to accomplish what you've accomplished? What do you think it is about you?
It's not me only, it's also the time and place. I mean, China is in a very special phase of development, and I think if you look all around the world and all through history, there aren't so many 30-year periods that so much development has happened in one place. And of course, change and development brings opportunity, and perhaps certain people are attracted to that change and dynamism that we feel here.
This year, President Xi talked a lot about this Chinese dream. Yes. And in some ways, you've lived a Chinese dream in the last 30 years. How would you define what this dream is?
Well, let me tell you about the person who's the general manager of Beijing United Family Hospital, so one of our facilities. When she joined us in 1992, she joined us as a project assistant, and she was fresh out of the Army with a bachelor's degree. She spoke good English, but she bought into the importance of what we were doing in healthcare. And at the same time, she was working flat out, full time. She's gone out and gotten 2 master's degrees in healthcare administration. She's rotated through every job you can have in the hospital except for being a doctor and a nurse, which take a separate special kind of education. And now she's the head of over 1,000-person set of facilities. And I've seen many people go through that kind of trajectory, and it's because I think of the pace of development here, that people that want to make a contribution have an opportunity to really better themselves economically, professionally, culturally. People that never dreamed about leaving their hometown now can travel internationally, and really citizens of China more and more are becoming full members of the world.
See, they can seize the opportunity and the world open to them.
Yes.
Yeah? So how would you define your Chinese dream? Maybe the future 10 years, future 30 years?
Yeah, well, I'd love to see the kind of quality of healthcare that we've been able to develop within our United Family system available to more and more people, either directly through our hospitals and clinics or because the public system absorbs this or that bit that we've been able to model and demonstrate. For me, that will be fulfillment of a dream. And although to a certain extent I feel a certain level of that fulfillment, there's still more to do and more to go. And I guess part of my China dream is that all 3 of my children will build a career that has something to do with China as well, and either they'll come back here to develop their career or at least be able to maintain the link and come and visit.
Hey Roberta, it was such a pleasure to have you here on Up Close again.
The pleasure was mine.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And thank you to our viewers at home for tuning in. We'll see you next weekend on Up Close. Bye for now.